Well, it's a misty, murky day today, but I've been off the plot for a few days, so things have grown. It's time to harvest a few things today, but there's also some other jobs to be done. And what I'm going to deal with first, I've been putting off for quite a while, and that's a pretty major allotment fail. I'll show you. So these are my paths, and they're wood chip, and as you can see, they're completely taken over by weeds, mainly the dreaded mare's tail. Oh, and there's been a cat helping itself to a litter tray for their own use. And as you can see, same on this side. And we've got some fairly substantial weeds, and we've got some dock that's getting into the leeks, and it really is nearly taken over. And so what is the cause of that? Well, quite simply, the barrier that I have under those wood chips is insufficient. The paths were set up 2 years ago, and this year I re-chipped them. But I just put the new chip on the old chip, and the cardboard barrier that I put down is obviously rotted, and now everything can grow through. By comparison, if you look at these paths, I'm certainly getting some weed, but not much. And I've got a weed membrane under here. You can just see it there. And really, that's the difference. And these paths over here, I would say the barrier has been a little bit more successful. But if we look over the top there, you can see it's nearly as bad as the other side. So there's nothing for it. I need to weed this, but I also need to think about what barrier I'm going to put down. And it's a pretty major job, really. I think the thing to do is to weed and pull the chip up and just see whether I can do some barrier one row at a time and gradually get in control. Now, in the last week, it looks like we've had a major infestation of caterpillars, and these fellas have all got to come off or we'll have no crops at all. So I think this is attack number 4 on the plot, and I'm going to get rid of all these and get hopefully protected from the dreaded caterpillar. Now, fortunately, I'm not squeamish about caterpillars, but I can imagine if you are, then this is a horrible task. And there are probably 100 caterpillars on here, so it's going to take me some time. But there is really nothing short of dealing with them in this way. I don't want to put any insecticides on my crops. They are no dig and green, and I want to make sure that I keep them that way. I'm dropping a few, which is probably not a good idea, but they're slippery critters, and when it's damp like this, they come out, which is handy. Well, there's quite a few there, and I'll be getting rid of those. And I just noticed there's a green variety there as well, which I hadn't seen. Really looks like the butterflies and moths have had their way with the plants, and we'll have to keep a close eye on this. I'll come back here a bit later in the day, see if anything else has risen to the top. I'm going to move my munchkin pumpkin plant out of here because I'm going to do the path, but also because I've got some fruit on there and I want to protect it from any slugs. There's another one forming there, and so I'm going to get it up onto those water tanks and keep it out of harm's way. These strawberries now, I've pretty much had it, but I'm going to keep hold of them for the runners. I'm going to take a few more runners shortly, just as insurance. I've got plenty coming on, but it's always good to have some spare just in case the winter takes its toll. Well, this is definitely a get down and get dirty sort of job. I'm just going to see what this ground involves. We'll start off with these fairly meaty dock leaves. You can see they're well rooted. It's important when you're pulling out these thistle type weeds that you get the tap root, otherwise they just come back. And as for the mare's tail, well, there's no way I'm going to get all the roots out of this, but I'm just going to strip it down, get the top off, and then I can have a look at raking this wood chip, see what's left of it and what I can salvage. It's going to be a long job. While I'm in here, I'll take anything that I see that's amongst the leeks. Save me doing that job again at a later date. The leeks are coming on well. They're certainly thickening up nicely. I've had one or two that have bolted, but not too many. And I think this damp and warm weather will serve them well, actually. It's only when they get dry that I find that they start to bolt badly. So I'm hoping that this damp, moist, warm weather will mean I don't get too many that bolt. So that wasn't the most enjoyable job I've ever done on the allotment, but it's a necessary one. This wood chip has rotted down. In fact, it's making really good compost, but I want to keep the weeds at bay in these paths. It enables me to garden on the rest of the strips. So I've put this weed membrane down, and I don't want to do this too many times. So I've put it down double thickness, and I've kept the finished edge nearest the crops so that at a later date I can go down the edge and put the burner on the sides, and that will fix these frayed edges which just produce this horrendous long thin twine that gets everywhere. So it's important to burn those edges and get them sealed. But in the meantime, I'll put what wood chip I have salvaged on top just to keep the membrane flat while it's windy, and then I'll have to think about where I find additional material to put on top. So next step is to get the wood chip on. I'll probably keep the stones at either end just to secure it, and that may well keep the weeds and the mare's tail at bay for a little while. So there we are, a lot tidier. Got the leeks weeded on one side. It's a long job, but it's an important one. Keep on top of the weed, and in the long run it saves you a lot of time and labour. So I'm just going to work my way across to the next one, which is looking pretty horrendous, but we'll get there. So there we go. It's a day later and we've had quite a lot of rain, but that path is looking so much better. And there's something satisfying about seeing your crops clearly without weed around them. And those two paths have come up just fine. And I'll have to think now about what I use to go on the surfaces during the winter months. And I also did these two. So nicely cleared up, and it gave me a great chance while I was down low to see the parsnips coming to fruition. And they're looking really good. There's a little bit of damage on the tops, but generally they're growing really well. And then I weeded this bed ready for the purple sprouting broccoli, and also cleaned up this path. So I feel like I'm on top of this area now. It's been a while, but as with all vegetable garden, it's a bit of a battle. Sometimes you're winning and sometimes you're losing. And I've just spotted the enemy. Oh, two enemies. So we've got some more caterpillars down here. Quite a little nest of them there. I'll come back for those. But what I'd spotted was this fella, and I'm going to remove him too. Just chomping on my beans. Well, I ended up spending so much time on the paths yesterday, I didn't get time to do the harvesting that I planned. So I'm going to do that now. And first on my list is these courgettes, some of which are getting quite large. And there's some interesting shapes and colours in here, but we'll use them all. They're all good. And this one is getting a bit too big. To be honest, that's stretching it a bit. Wow, that's a lot more than I planned. But to be honest, once they get to this size, if you don't take them, then they become fairly unusable. Unless you're making marrow wine or something like that. And there we go, 2 buckets. That's a pretty good crop out of 2 buckets. And I think I've got about 8 left. It's going to keep us going for a fair while. Potatoes, check. Courgettes, check. Onions and carrots. Let's see. Well, my onion bed has served me well so far. I've had a few weeds, which I keep trying to keep on top of. Some of these shallots have been amazing, but they don't really keep particularly well, or that's been my experience, probably because of the white rot. But we're going to take a couple of these, and Mrs. Kate will work her magic. There's very little root growth on these, and I think that's probably part of the white rot problem. But we'll make the most of them. And these other onions have done really well, and this is Ryan's Burger, the longer keeper, and we've got a few Elsa Craig, and we're getting some real size on those. And the leaves are just starting to turn on the ends, so I don't think it'll be long before they start to die back and we'll get on to pulling them. Well, this is quite an exciting moment. I'm going to try and pull some of these Nantes 2 carrots, which I grew just as extras really in some old compost. I noticed there's a butterfly already sat in here. There he goes. So I'm going to pull the biggest of the carrots and leave the others to grow on. So let's see what we've got. Wow. Now, I pulled up a few that I didn't mean to, but that's a cracking carrot for some spares. I'm going to poke these back in. I don't know whether that'll work, but we'll see. One or two slugs in here. Let's see if we can find some other bigger ones. Not bad. And again, I pulled a few extras, but I'm going to just try poking them back in. See if I can get them to regrow. Well, there's a nice one there. Look at that. There we are. Now that'll do us nicely for lunch, and hopefully the others will continue to grow. So that's carrots and onions, cabbage and runner beans. Now my cabbage has been a bit ravaged by slugs, but what's interesting is that this greyhound variety doesn't seem to get affected in the same way as the primo cabbages. So that's something to remember for the future, and I do like the shape of them. So let's have one. And the chickens will be enjoying these. Now when it comes to the runner beans, I always pick whatever I can see, because picking the beans just means that the rest of the beans develop. So it's always good to pick as many as you can, and any that you don't use immediately, just prepare and get in the freezer. And then you've got food for the winter, which is fantastic. Well, that is a fair old crop of beans. and there are plenty more to come. And that's filled that bucket, and that's a good afternoon's work to prepare for the freezer. Good times. Runner beans, check. Cabbage, check. That just leaves tomatoes and 4 sticks of rhubarb. So I'm fighting against the dreaded blight, but I'm certainly getting a few decent tomatoes, so I'm pleased with that. It's a bit of a race against time, but these are just fine. I'm sure there's many people who wonder why gardeners put all the effort they do into growing vegetables and basically maintaining, which is quite tough sometimes. But I've got to say, what motivates me is right here. And to get that sort of produce off the plot in just an hour or so is very rewarding indeed. Have a great weekend. Well, it takes quite a lot of preparation, but we're sure going to enjoy those in the winter months. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.